Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate you calling this hearing. Apologize I couldn't be here earlier. I was at a Senate Foreign Relations business meeting, which had some important resolutions we had to be passing. So I've missed a lot of the detailed testimony, questions and answers, and I really don't want to hop into where some other people have tread. So let me kind of pull back and let's go to the obvious. Mr. Slavitt, your background is in the private sector, correct?
That's correct, Senator.
You came from Optima, which is a division of United Health?
Optum, yes.
What was the average profit margin of United Health after tax?
4 or 5, 6%, perhaps.
Relatively low. I mean, kind of on average, public corporations have pre-tax about 10% and after-tax about 5%, yep. Correct? Not a wildly profitable or outrageously profitable type of industry, correct?
That's correct.
From your standpoint, again, I know you're new to the position. Wouldn't you have kind of real concerns as a private sector insurer that under the old system, that when the government set up a bunch of these co-ops, that they were going to subsidize them with these risk corridors and these reinsurance plans? Weren't you a little concerned that maybe these co-ops might tend to try and gain market share by underpricing their premiums?
So, you ask a really good, difficult question.
So I'd like just a basic, obvious answer to it from the private sector. Isn't that a real legitimate concern? Isn't that exactly what happened?
Well, so these companies entered markets that had not had new competitors in many cases in decades. So of course, I think you're correct. The companies would not like to see someone come in and offer more.
So not what the company. No, I'm saying what was the natural result of what was going to happen with these government-run co-ops? Is they're going to come in, they're going to try and gain market share, they're going to underprice their product based on what their loss ratio would be, correct?
Well,
and isn't that exactly what happened? Isn't that exactly why the American taxpayer on the hook for about $2.5 billion now in loans?
So these were loans to local nonprofit companies who I don't think had as a goal, I wouldn't imagine they had as a goal to price themselves out of business. I think they clearly in many cases.
It's exactly what happened though, correct?
That's correct in many cases, yes.
Did you, in the private sector, did you ever believe for a moment President Obama's assurance that if under Obamacare, the cost of family health care would decline by $2,500 per year? Did you ever think that was possible, coming, again, from the insurance industry, where you know that the profit margin is about 5%? There's about $1 trillion of the $2.8 trillion we spend annually in 2012 runs through insurance companies. And the average after-tax profits of the top 7 is about 4.4%. So again, that's about $45 to $50 billion of profit out of a $2,800 billion a year market.
Yep.
Did you ever think for a minute that this government-run healthcare system would actually deliver healthcare costs $2,500 less per year per family?
So the way I interpret that $2,500, maybe I'm not interpreting it correctly, is that would be the reduction in healthcare cost trend under the Affordable Care Act, which...
Do you think that's the way the American people heard that?
I think that's how some people heard it.
You think that's what the majority of Americans heard when they listened to President Obama and supporters of the bill promise that if you pass this wonderful bill, that the average cost for insurance per family is going to decline by $2,500? You think people thought, well, that'll just be, otherwise it'd go up higher by $2,500?
When I look at the text of that statement, yeah, that's how I interpret it. And also that 20 million new people have health insurance. We have an uninsured rate below 10%. I think all of those things, I don't think anybody could have perfectly predicted the outcome of a new law of this size and complexity. And I think there's certainly some very good things and certainly some bad things and some challenges. And we're talking about one of the biggest challenges today.
In your private sector experience, did you ever participate in high-risk pools in different states?
I'm aware of them, sure.
Okay. Another promise Obama made and other supporters of the bill made is that if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, period. Again, coming from the private sector, understanding how those high-risk pools, by the way, we had one in Wisconsin, about 22,000 people were getting coverage that they liked, that they could afford. Coming from the private sector, looking at Obamacare law, you knew in the private sector those high-risk pools would be gone, correct? That people that were being insured under the high-risk pools would not have access to those health care plans, correct? Did you have any doubt that those things would survive? In other words, did you believe President Obama's repeated assurance and promise that if you like your health care plan, you can keep it, period? Did you ever for a minute believe that claim?
Well, what I believed was that there would be guaranteed coverage in the marketplace so that everybody could get coverage. Whether or
So
not
in other words,
individual,
you did not believe President Obama's claim that if you like your health care plan,
yeah.
you can keep it.
I think what happened was there were folks that had coverage that was below a standard that the Affordable Care Act set, and some of those people did in fact lose their coverage, as you well know.
You also understand that as insurance products change, as networks narrow,
Sure.
people might lose if they lose a health care plan. Let's face it, if they lose a plan they could afford that they liked in a high-risk pool
Right.
that gave them access to a doctor, if they are forced onto a different plan, maybe a comparable plan, maybe one with better deductibles, although it hasn't happened, that being forced into another health care plan might cause them to lose access to a doctor they trusted, correct?
Yeah, the Affordable Care Act created a higher standard of
So
coverage.
President Obama's repeated assurance that if you like your doctor, you can keep that doctor, period, was incorrect, wasn't it?
Here's my perspective.
No, I just really wanted to answer the question.
I think hospitals and physicians have been moving in and out of healthcare networks for 20 and 30 years, and I don't think anything in the Affordable Care Act changed that fact. So, yes, I guess is the answer to that.
I mean, my point is those promises by President Obama were ruled PolitiFact's 2013 Lie of the Year. Coming from the private sector, had you made those kind of assurance to your policyholders, do you think your company would still be in business? Had your business, had you as a CEO or as a senior manager of one of those businesses conducted that level of massive consumer fraud, what would have happened to a private sector business? You wouldn't be around, would you? You'd be facing enormous number of lawsuits.
I think our interpretations are a little bit different, but I understand your point.
So again, getting back to the issue at hand, the part of this hearing is that CMS has loaned $2.4, $2.5 billion to co-ops that obviously were not going to be able to survive. We continue to pump money into these co-ops, knowing they would never be able to repay them. You have not done the due diligence. The review of these things have not been rigorous. It was obvious they were never going to be able to pay them back. Now the American taxpayer are going to be on the hook for about $2.5 billion, and that's assuming you don't continue to pump money into these failing enterprises. Anybody want to refute that?
So I guess what I would suggest, and I don't know that I will repeat a lot of the things that we've said so far today, but clearly starting up a small insurance company is one of the biggest challenges imaginable, particularly because, as you said, they face significant entrenched competitors with years of history, thousands of people, and these are small enterprises. And I think it's very fair to say that the risk of failure of these co-ops is quite high. What we've tried to do, to the best we can, and I think we'll accept our share of responsibility and criticism, certainly, is to oversee these programs, to maximize the opportunity, to get these co-ops through the early 3 to 4 year startup stage to a point where they can be stable and the federal taxpayer can get its money back. In some cases, we've not been able to do that, and in some cases, those companies have not put forward strategies which have succeeded in those markets, and I would certainly acknowledge that, Senator.
I mean, that's great you're accepting the responsibility, but the American taxpayer will be on the hook for the $2.4, $2.5 billion, and that's unfortunate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.